I'm J.W. Harrington, that stands for James William, no secrets, but I go by J.W. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs here at University of Washington, Tacoma, and on behalf of the campus and the university, I welcome you to UW-Tacoma and to the Milgard Family Assembly Room here in William Phillip Hall. And welcome to this, the 5th Annual Urban Studies Forum. This event is a leading example of our campus's role as a convener, community gathering place, and place of ideas. Ideas in direct service of this region. Previous fora have focused on waterfront development, university's role in community development, post-industrial cities, and transportation and urban development. How many of you here have been involved with the previous forum? Okay, great, I figured we'd have some return folks. This year's topic is Beyond Urban Branding, and it's attracted a great deal of interest, and that's evidenced by your presence here today, despite your busy schedules. The topic is deeply intertwined with the development of this campus, and really any thoughtful university. Like cities and regions, a university must work thoughtfully to identify what we are, our sources of distinctiveness, and then to take actions, really take actions that strengthen our distinctiveness in fulfillment of mission. And while I'm no expert in urban branding, I have a strong sense that it is identifying distinctiveness, but really then taking actions in fulfillment of mission that we're all about in cities and in this university. Our Chancellor, Deborah Friedman, brought our distinctiveness into sharp focus and gave it a name. The only urban serving university campus in Washington State, not just urban located, but serving the physical, economic, intellectual, and social transformation of this city and of its region. Many of you knew Deborah. You know that her untimely death at the end of last month was a huge loss to the university and the region. May we take a moment of silence to remember and honor Deborah Friedman. Over to Fern Tiger.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Fern Tiger, and I'm a professor here at UW-T in the Urban Studies program, and I'm one of the organizers of this year's forum, which, as you just heard, has been going on for 5 years, each year with a different topic and focus. I'd like to begin by echoing JW's warm welcome to everyone here, and to repeat what JW said about how supportive Chancellor Friedman was of the forum, and frankly, of this one in particular. We had numerous conversations about both the topic and the selection of speakers over the past few months. This was a topic she cared about deeply, and she hoped that this forum would support the transformative momentum of the South Sound. From the number of people who've registered for the forum, an absolute record for the 5 years, I think it's a topic of interest to many of us. So just out of curiosity, can you raise your hand if you've lived in the greater Tacoma area for more than 20 years? Wow. 30? 40? Whoa, that's pretty impressive, and I'm not going beyond 40. Now, before I go into my comments and explain the day's agenda, we're going to get everybody involved in a very, very short exercise. You don't have to worry, it's very easy, and I'm hoping that everybody will participate, regardless of whether you live in the South Sound or not, because I looked at the registration and there are some people coming from Seattle. So today's program is relatively broad, and by that I mean the day's conversations will address some of the larger issues that surround place-based branding and some specific theories and ideas and practices related to the topic happening around the country and even across the globe. However, just for a minute, actually 2 minutes, I want you to think very specifically and very locally. On your table, there are blank cards, color cards. There's also white ones. Ignore the white ones, use the color ones. And I can't say which color because they're all different colors apparently. So I'd like you to take the next 2 minutes, I'm going to time it, to simply list 3 words, the very first 3 words that pop into your head when you think about Tacoma. Please do this without consulting your neighbor or having any table conversation, just the first 3 words that you think of when you think Tacoma. I'm going to set the timer now, and in 2 minutes exactly, we're going to collect the cards, and you'll hear more about this at lunch, okay? So 2 minutes start now. Okay, so now people are going to come around and collect them, so exercise over. Great job, everybody. You'll hear more about this at lunch. Okay, so while the cards are being picked up, I'd like to formally begin the program. And I'd like to begin by thanking our donors, the Pierce County Regional Council, Selden's Designer Home Furnishings, and I'd like to give a special shout out to Stan Selden, who has been really incredible in supporting this event. Other funders, AHBL, BCRA, the Business Examiner, Dwyer, Pemberton & Colson, Exit 133, Helix Design Group, Corsmo Construction, Neil Walter Company, and Via Architecture. So a big round of applause. We couldn't do it without them. Now, as one of the organizers of this year's forum, I was somewhat responsible for choosing this year's topic, Beyond Urban Branding, the Promise, the Problem, the Potential. But in many respects, this topic chose me. Since coming to UW-T just 18 short months ago, I've heard a lot about local branding. Because of what I do in my other non-academic life, many people have asked my opinion about how to develop a brand for Tacoma or the South Sound. And I've always said the same thing. Branding is a process, it's not a product. It's not a logo, it's not a tagline, it's not a marketing campaign. It has to begin with a vision, a purpose, an identity that emerges from an inclusive process that involves all sectors and all communities within a city and a region. The nation is literally littered from coast to coast with failed attempts at city branding through top-down, focus-grouped, and market-driven efforts that are developed with the sole focus of drumming up business or just boosting tourism. Today's forum is purposefully called Beyond Urban Branding because branding should be an authentic process that engages a community to develop a real vision, which is a complicated task and much easier said than done. It's much more than holding a town hall meeting, and it's much more than doing an online survey. Getting people engaged in their community means, first of all, that they have to identify as part of that community, and sometimes that can be the biggest battle of all. How do you engage people who feel disenfranchised? How do you pull groups together from very diverse and disparate places? Or how do you pull together a subset of a community or whole neighborhoods when actually people are overwhelmed already by their own lives, let alone by the greater city infrastructure? How do you say this time the process is going to be different? This time we're actually going to listen to you. This time we're really going to incorporate your thoughts. It's true that in every community, including this one, there have been efforts over the years to brand Tacoma and the South Sound, or at least to think about taglines, logos, and messages. But how do you create the appropriate and authentic brand and identity of a place? The identity of a place is really about getting all of the voices of a community included and making them part of the equation, part of the learning process that will bring forth a vision. Far too often, a community engagement process only reaches those who self-select to participate, only those voices that have the means and the comfort level and the confidence to get involved and make themselves heard. It's difficult to do, but it's also essential if you're going to create a meaningful, authentic urban brand, an identity that's embraced by the broad community and then used to enhance the place itself. As I mentioned earlier, today's forum is not about Tacoma, and it's not about the South Sound per se. But that said, many of us may well be grappling with the issue of urban branding now, or will in the near future. And I trust that hearing today's presentations and conversations hearing about different ways of approaching a city's or a region's identity, and about the role of stories and narrative will be an asset from which we as a community can build. Curating today's program was actually quite fascinating because urban branding is very much a growing field. There's exciting work going on. Much of it is happening actually in Europe. Today, as cities across the globe compete with one another for business, for jobs, for workers, and even for vacationers, they're adopting aggressive and even scientific approaches to differentiating their cities. Throughout the day, we're going to hear about different philosophies, different approaches, and different opportunities and pitfalls that have marked the paths toward urban revitalization in different cities around the world. Here in the US, these efforts span from formal redevelopment plans to organic efforts to articulate a regional identity. Today we'll hear about the connection between physical space and public perception. We'll hear about the tension between official, formal branding campaigns and grassroots regional identities. We'll hear about cities big and small that have strived to distinguish and define themselves with varying degrees of success and accuracy. And we'll hear real stories of real struggles and also real victories that impact people's lives in the cities they live in across the United States. It's the hope of all of us who've been involved in organizing today's event that we'll be able to absorb and use this information as we move forward here in Greater Tacoma. As we listen to the speakers today, and as you participate, I hope, in a very active Q&A after each session, I hope we'll begin to consider ways in which the experiences in other places may be helpful as our community moves forward to enhance and expand its identity, its brand, and that we can create an identity that is community-driven, authentic, and meaningful, developed through a process that builds community and continues to build it well into the future, a process and a product that moves beyond branding. Now, for today's agenda. There are three main components of the program: an opening speaker, and then two three-person panels, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We'll also have a discussant joining each group of speakers. The discussants will engage in a conversation with the speakers to help synthesize the presentations. The presentations for each session will go for about 45 minutes for the opening speaker and an hour for each of the three-person panels. The discussion portion will be about 15 minutes for each panel, and then we'll open it up to questions for 30 minutes at each. Over lunch, there's going to be a follow-up to the 2-minute exercise that you just completed.